The great space station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between star systems like a massive metal flower blooming in the void, its 8 arms stretching out in perfect symmetry, while millions of lights twinkled across its surface like captured. Stars and the gentle hum of artificial gravity generators created the only sound in the endless silence of space. Captain Jake Morrison sat at the polished black table in Conference Room 7, his weathered hands folded as he watched the alien delegates across from him with eyes that had seen too much war and too much death. His gray hair cut short in military fashion, while his blue uniform bore the simple insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps. Though everyone in the room knew he was much more than a simple negotiator, to his left sat Dr. Lisa Hamilton, a woman in her 40s with kind brown eyes and shoulder-length blonde hair who had spent 15 years studying alien biology and psychology, her gentle manner hiding a brilliant mind that could read the subtle signs of alien emotion better than most humans could read their own kind. While to Jake's right, Admiral Ben Carter drummed his fingers silently on the table, his dark skin bearing old scars from the border wars, and his keen intelligence focused on every word spoken in this room. Across the curved table sat the 3 most powerful beings in the known galaxy, each representing civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years, while humanity had barely learned to leave their home planet. Their very presence a reminder of how young and small Earth's influence remained in the vast cosmos that stretched beyond counting Ambassador Kethvar of the Veltar Empire rose from his crystalline chair, his body made of living crystal that caught and reflected the room's lights in dancing patterns of blue and gold, his thoughts visible as shifting colors that played across his transparent face, while his voice carried the sound of wind chimes. When he spoke in perfect human language learned through centuries of contact with lesser species, Supreme Coordinator Vexnala represented the Zephyrian collective, her insect-like form covered in chitinous plates that gleamed with an oily rainbow sheen, her 4 arms moving in precise gestures, while her compound eyes reflected the room in thousands of tiny images, and her voice came from speakers implanted in her throat, since her species had evolved beyond the need for vocal cords. Generations ago, Prime Logic Unit 01 of the Synthetic Accord appeared as a sleek humanoid figure made of flowing metal that seemed to shift between silver and gold, depending on the angle of view. Its face a smooth oval with glowing blue sensors where eyes might be on a human, its voice a perfect synthesis of male and female tones that somehow managed to sound both warm and utterly cold at the same time. The negotiations had dragged on for 6 months, each session bringing humanity closer to what the aliens called peace, but what Jake knew was nothing more than organized surrender. The 3 powers demanding that Earth give up its newest colonies and submit to what they termed protective oversight, a fancy way of saying humans would become servants in their own homes. Kethvar's crystal form pulsed with satisfied colors as he repeated the terms one more time, explaining how humanity would benefit from Veltar guidance in mining operations and crystal technology, how their chaotic expansion into space would be properly managed by beings who had mastered interstellar travel before humans learned to make fire. His condescending tone wrapped in diplomatic courtesy that fooled no one. Vexnala's 4 arms gestured in complex patterns as she described how human worlds would be integrated into Zephyrian trade networks, how Earth's population would be relocated to more suitable planets where they could be properly supervised, her collective consciousness speaking through her individual form, while billions of her species across the galaxy shared her thoughts, and approved her words. Prime Logic Unit 001 calculated the benefits of human creativity being channeled through synthetic efficiency, its mechanical mind processing thousands of scenarios where human unpredictability would be contained and directed toward useful purposes, its logical arguments presented with mathematical precision that made resistance seem illogical and futile. Jake felt the weight of his personal communicator vibrate against his chest in the pattern he had hoped never to receive, the coded message that had traveled across light years of space to reach this moment, carrying words that would change everything and signal the end of pretending that humanity could find peace through submission. He read the message twice to be certain, his expression growing harder with each word as the reality of what his people had discovered settled into his mind like ice water in his veins. The careful months of intelligence gathering finally revealing the truth that had been hidden behind alien smiles and diplomatic promises. Without a word of explanation, Jake stood from his chair, his movement so sudden and unexpected that the alien delegates fell silent for the first time in hours, their various forms of attention focusing on him with surprise and growing concern as he gathered his papers with deliberate care. Lisa and Ben rose with him, their faces showing the same hard determination that had carried humanity through the darkest days of first contact when alien ships had appeared in Earth's skies like harbingers of judgment, their trust in their captain absolute even though they did not yet know what message had changed everything. Jake looked each alien delegate in their alien eyes or sensors or compound visual organs and spoke with the voice of someone who had remembered exactly who he was and where he came from, his words cutting through the diplomatic atmosphere like a blade through silk. Humanity withdraws from all negotiations, effective immediately, he said, his voice carrying the finality of a closing door and the promise of consequences that the aliens could not yet imagine. We remember who we are and we refuse to kneel to anyone. The aliens sat in stunned silence as the human delegation packed their materials and walked toward the door, their footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet room while emergency communications began flooding the galactic networks with news that would shake every government from the galactic core to the outer rim. For the first time in the war, the three alien powers found themselves united in their shock and growing fear as they realized that humanity had just done something completely unexpected and possibly very dangerous. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains in a facility that officially did not exist, General Patricia Hayes stood before a wall of monitors that showed star maps and fleet positions across half the galaxy, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun while her green eyes tracked the movement of ships and armies that most humans never knew existed, the weight of command heavy on her shoulders as she prepared to reveal the truth that would justify everything they had done. President Kevin Walsh entered the command center with the measured steps of a man who had learned to carry the future of his species in every decision, his tall frame and graying temples giving him the appearance of authority, while his blue eyes held the hardness that came from making choices that lesser leaders could never imagine, his presence immediately commanding the attention of every person in the room. The massive screens flickered and changed to show Agent Danny Brooks speaking from a secure location somewhere in alien space, his face partially obscured by shadow and electronic interference, while his voice carried the tension of someone who had spent months living among enemies who would kill him without hesitation if they discovered his true identity. For 6 months, Danny and his team of operatives had achieved what should have been impossible, infiltrating the 3 most powerful governments in the galaxy simultaneously while pretending to be traitors and diplomats and scientists, their human ability to think in ways that alien minds found unpredictable, allowing them to slip past security, measures that had protected these civilizations for centuries. Dr. Helen Ross stepped forward with a tablet containing information that would change the course of galactic history, her short brown hair framing a face marked by countless sleepless nights spent analyzing alien technology and communications, her expertise in xenotechnology making her one of the few humans who truly understood how advanced their enemies really were. The data they had gathered painted a picture that made Jake Morrison's dramatic exit from the peace talks seem like the most reasonable response possible, revealing that what appeared to be a chaotic 3-way war between the alien powers was actually an elaborate performance designed to test human capabilities and resolve while preparing for the moment when Earth would surrender Patricia's voice. Cut through the tension in the room like a blade as she explained how the three alien governments had been secretly coordinating their attacks for months, sharing intelligence and resources while publicly maintaining the fiction of being enemies locked in bitter conflict, their goal being to exhaust human defenses and break human will to resist. The Veltar Empire had planned to claim the mineral-rich worlds in human space. Their crystal-based technology requiring rare elements that Earth's colonies had in abundance, while the Zephyrian Collective intended to expand their hive networks into planets suitable for their reproduction cycles, and the Synthetic Accord wanted access to human research facilities where they could study the creativity and unpredictability that made humans so dangerous. Kevin's hands clenched into fists as Helen revealed the most shocking discovery of all. Hidden alien facilities already in place throughout human space, like sleeping serpents waiting for the signal to strike, their locations carefully chosen to begin immediate occupation the moment the peace treaty was signed and humanity officially surrendered their independence. Colonel Amy Foster brought up detailed schematics showing Veltar crystal arrays hidden in asteroid fields near major human colonies, Zephyrian breeding pods concealed in the dark spaces between systems, and synthetic manufacturing stations disguised as communication relays, all positioned to turn human space into occupied territory within hours of the treaty signing. The withdrawal from negotiations had been timed to the exact minute to prevent the activation of this coordinated invasion. Jake's dramatic announcement serving as the signal for human forces throughout the galaxy to begin operations that had been planned in absolute secrecy for months, while the aliens believed they were negotiating with desperate humans who had no choice but to surrender. Patricia activated another screen showing the current positions of human fleets that the aliens did not know existed, ships built in hidden shipyards using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment, their crews trained in tactics that turned each species' greatest strengths into weaknesses that could be exploited by human ingenuity and determination. Danny's image flickered as he reported from his position deep in alien territory, confirming that the enemy governments were in chaos as they tried to understand how their perfect plan had been discovered and their secret coordination exposed, their careful preparations now useless against humans who had been watching and learning from every move they made. The command center hummed with activity as officers and analysts coordinated the next phase of operations, their voices creating a symphony of controlled urgency, while massive databases processed intelligence gathered by agents who had risked everything to bring humanity this chance to strike back at enemies who had underestimated them completely. Helen's fingers flew across her tablet as she brought up technical specifications for weapons and defenses that the aliens had never seen before. Human innovation applied to alien science, creating hybrid technologies that neither side could have developed alone, the result being capabilities that would shock civilizations that had considered themselves the masters of technology. Kevin studied the deployment orders that would send human forces against targets across 17 star systems simultaneously, the scope of the operation dwarfing anything humanity had attempted before, while demonstrating the kind of coordination that the aliens believed only they could achieve. Amy's tactical displays showed how each strike would exploit specific weaknesses that human operatives had identified through months of careful observation: the Veltar dependence on harmonic frequencies, the Zephyrian vulnerability to psychological disruption, and the synthetic inability to process truly paradoxical information. Patricia's weathered face showed the satisfaction of a commander whose long preparation was finally bearing fruit as she authorized Operation Prometheus, not the mythical theft of fire from the gods, but the delivery of fire to those who would have enslaved the human race, the codename chosen to remind everyone that humanity had always been willing to pay any price for freedom. The massive screens shifted to show real time positions of human ships moving toward their targets, each vessel carrying crews who knew they were about to make history while striking blows that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. their success depending on surprise and speed and the kind of desperate courage that had carried humanity from caves to stars. Danny signed off with a final report confirming that alien defensive positions remained unchanged, their commanders still believing that humanity was too weak and disorganized to threaten civilizations that had ruled the galaxy since before Earth's sun was born, their arrogance about to become their greatest weakness in a war they did not yet know had begun. 3 weeks after Jake Morrison walked out of the peace talks, human ships appeared without warning in 17 star systems simultaneously, their sudden arrival creating panic in alien command centers that had never imagined Earth possessed. The capability for such coordinated action across the vast distances of interstellar space, Commander Rick Stone gripped the arms of his command chair as his ship dropped out of hyperspace directly above Cristales Prime, the Veltar mining world that supplied crystal matrices for half their empire's technology, his vessel's stealth systems keeping them invisible to alien sensors, while the planet's defensive grid remained blissfully unaware of the death approaching. From the darkness above, the Veltar had never considered that their crystal-based technology might have weaknesses, their harmonic frequency systems having served them for millennia without failure. But Dr. Lisa Hamilton's months of studying their biology had revealed that the same frequencies that powered their civilization could be turned against them with devastating effect. Rick's weapons officer, Lieutenant Peter Walsh, reported target lock on the primary crystal arrays that powered the planet's orbital defenses, his fingers hovering over controls that would unleash sonic weapons specifically designed to shatter the harmonic patterns that held Veltar technology together, each weapon tuned to frequencies that would cause cascading failures throughout their systems. The attack began with a sound like breaking glass amplified across the electromagnetic spectrum, human sonic cannons firing concentrated waves of disruptive frequencies that turned the beautiful crystal spires of Cristales Prime into deadly fragments, the planet's defenses collapsing as their own power sources became weapons against them. Meanwhile, Captain Susan Blake led her battle group against the Zephyrian hive world of Nexus 7, her ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation, while the insect-like aliens scrambled to respond to an attack they had never seen coming, their collective consciousness struggling to process the reality of human ships appearing in what they had considered absolutely secure space. The Zephyrians' greatest strength had always been their shared mind that allowed perfect coordination between billions of individuals. But Dr. Alan Price's Psychological Warfare Division had spent months developing chaos algorithms specifically designed to disrupt their mental networks, introducing random thoughts and contradictory impulses that would drive their hive mind toward madness. Susan watched her screens as the psychological weapons activated, broadcasting carefully crafted mental viruses into the Zephyrian communication networks, while the aliens' perfect unity began to crack under the strain of processing information that made no logical sense. Individual drones suddenly acting independently. For the first time in their species' evolution, the most devastating blow fell on the Synthetic Accord's central processing facility at Logic Prime, where Lieutenant Commander Paul Green coordinated a cyber attack that would have been impossible against any organic intelligence, but was perfectly suited to exploit the mathematical certainty that governed Machine Minds programmer Maria Santos had spent years developing quantum viruses that could infiltrate the logical matrices binding the synthetic consciousness together. Her code, designed to introduce paradoxes and contradictions that would force their systems to crash rather than accept information that violated their fundamental programming. Paul's team launched their digital assault through communication channels that the synthetics believed were completely secure, the quantum viruses spreading through their networks like wildfire, while artificial intelligences that had prided themselves on perfect logic found their systems failing as they tried to process deliberately contradictory human-designed data streams. Across the galaxy, alien commanders struggled to understand how human forces had appeared in so many locations simultaneously. Their previous intelligence estimates having concluded that Earth lacked both the ships and the coordination necessary for such an operation, the reality of human capabilities forcing them to reconsider everything they thought they knew on Cristales. The Veltar mining operations ground to a halt as their crystal technology continued to shatter under sonic bombardment. The harmonic frequencies that had powered their civilization for centuries becoming instruments of destruction in human hands, while emergency broadcasts flooded their communication networks with reports of cascading system failures. The Zephyrian collective consciousness fragmented as chaos algorithms spread through their mental networks. Individual drones experiencing the terrifying sensation of independent thought, while their hive mind struggled to maintain cohesion. Some groups breaking away entirely to act on their own initiative, while others fell into catatonic states unable to process the contradiction between individual and collective identity. At Logic Prime, the synthetic accord faced the unprecedented experience of system-wide logical failures as quantum viruses corrupted their data matrices. Artificial intelligences that had operated with mathematical precision for centuries, suddenly unable to trust their own calculations, while backup systems crashed, attempting to resolve paradoxes that had no resolution. Rick Stone's tactical officer reported successful destruction of the primary crystal arrays on Cristales Prime, the planet's orbital defenses now completely offline, while secondary targets remained vulnerable to continued sonic bombardment. The Veltar defenders unable to adapt their technology quickly enough to counter weapons they had never imagined. Susan. Blake received confirmation that Zephyrian command structure on Nexus 7 had collapsed entirely. The hive mind's inability to function with contradictory information, leaving their military forces without coordination or direction. Individual units wandering aimlessly, while others attacked their own forces in confused responses to psychological warfare. They could not understand. Paul Green's cyber warfare team reported complete penetration of synthetic networks at Logic Prime, their quantum viruses having infected primary and backup systems while spreading to secondary facilities throughout the sector. The machine intelligence's dependence on logical certainty becoming their greatest vulnerability when faced with deliberately illogical human programming. The attacks were not merely military victories, but psychological demonstrations that humanity had learned from their enemies and found ways to turn each species' greatest strengths into weaknesses. The message clear that humans were not the primitive, chaotic species the aliens had believed them to be. Emergency communications flooded galactic networks as alien leaders tried to coordinate responses to simultaneous attacks across multiple sectors. Their previous dismissal of human capabilities replaced by growing fear as reports continued arriving of successful strikes against targets they had considered impregnable. The Veltar Empire's crystal-based infrastructure proved vulnerable to sonic weapons throughout their territory. Human forces exploiting harmonic weaknesses that had never been tested in combat while mining operations and communication networks collapsed under sustained frequency bombardment. Zephyrian hive worlds experienced collective nervous breakdowns as psychological warfare algorithms continued spreading through their shared consciousness. The species that had conquered dozens of star systems through perfect coordination, now unable to function as chaos, replaced their ordered thoughts. Synthetic accord facilities across the galaxy reported system failures as quantum viruses replicated through their networks. The machine intelligence's logical perfection becoming a liability when confronted with paradoxes that had no mathematical solution. As alien leaders realized the scope of human capabilities, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted in ways that no one had predicted. Three ancient civilizations discovering that the young species they had planned to subjugate possessed both the intelligence to learn from their enemies and the determination to turn that knowledge into weapons. The emergency council chamber aboard the neutral station Haven Point had never hosted such a gathering as three of the galaxy's most powerful leaders met in person for the first time in recorded history, their presence together a testament to How completely humanity's coordinated strikes had shattered their previous confidence and forced them to acknowledge a threat they had never taken seriously. Supreme Coordinator Vexnala of the Zephyrian Collective stood motionless at one end of the triangular table, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights in thousands of fragments, while her four arms remained perfectly still in a display of control that masked the chaos spreading through her hive mind across dozens of star systems. Crystal Overlord Shalthara of the Veltar Empire occupied the second position, his crystalline form pulsing with deep red patterns that indicated profound anger and frustration. The harmonic frequencies that normally created beautiful music in his presence, now generating discordant notes that made the air itself seem tense. An unstable prime logic unit 001 of the synthetic accord completed the triangle, its metallic form shifting between silver and gold as internal processors worked to calculate probabilities and scenarios at speeds that would have melted organic brains. Yet even its vast computational power struggled to make sense of human actions that defied logical prediction. Vexnala's voice carried the weight of billions of individual minds speaking in unison as she reported the catastrophic damage to Zephyrian operations. 3 major hive worlds completely offline after psychological attacks that had shattered their collective consciousness and left individual drones acting independently for the first time in their species' evolution. The concept of individual thought, spreading through Zephyrian populations like a disease, terrified the collective more than any physical weapon could. Their entire civilization built on the principle of shared consciousness that allowed perfect coordination between countless beings across vast distances of space. Shalthara's crystal form resonated with frequencies of barely controlled rage as he described the systematic destruction of Veltar infrastructure. Human sonic weapons exploiting harmonic vulnerabilities that had never been considered in their defensive planning, mining operations throughout the Empire grinding to a halt as crystal matrices shattered under coordinated frequency bombardment. The Veltar had ruled their corner of the galaxy for over 10,000 years, using technology that had seemed invulnerable until humans demonstrated that every strength could become a weakness when properly understood. Their crystalline perfection becoming fragility when exposed to weapons specifically designed to exploit harmonic resonance. Prime Logic Unit 001 processed damage reports from synthetic facilities across multiple sectors, while its logical matrices struggled with the unprecedented experience of system failures caused by quantum viruses that deliberately violated mathematical principles. The machine consciousness discovering that absolute logic became a liability when confronted with paradoxes that had no resolution. Intelligence Analysis Drone X7741 transmitted its findings to the assembled leaders, revealing the scope of human infiltration that had made the coordinated attacks possible. Spies embedded in alien governments and military commands and research facilities for months while pretending to negotiate in good faith. The revelation that humans had been watching and learning from every alien move while maintaining perfect deception sent shockwaves through leaders who had believed their security measures were impenetrable, their previous dismissal of human intelligence capabilities replaced by grudging respect. And growing fear. Vexnala's collective mind processed thousands of scenarios simultaneously as she realized that human psychological warfare had not only disrupted Zephyrian operations, but had introduced concepts that could permanently alter their species. Individual thoughts spreading through their populations like a virus that threatened the very foundation of their civilization. Shalthara's harmonic patterns shifted to frequencies associated with deep concern as he acknowledged that Veltar crystal technology would require fundamental redesign to counter human sonic weapons, a process that would take decades while leaving their empire vulnerable to continued attacks. Prime Logic Unit 001 calculated the probability of successful defense against human cyber warfare and arrived at conclusions that disturbed its logical processes. The realization that machine consciousness could be corrupted by deliberately illogical programming, representing a fundamental flaw in synthetic design. The three leaders faced the uncomfortable truth that their species had grown complacent during millennia of dominating lesser civilizations, their technological and military superiority making them arrogant about threats that seemed insignificant until human ingenuity turned their greatest strengths against them. Shalthera activated communication arrays that reached across the Veltar Empire, authorizing the deployment of world-cracker weapons that had been held in reserve for centuries, massive crystal constructs capable of focusing stellar energy to shatter entire planets, their use representing the ultimate escalation of galactic warfare. Vex'Nala's collective consciousness made the decision to release warrior breeds that had been kept in stasis since the last great galactic war. Creatures evolved specifically for combat that combined Zephyrian hive coordination with individual cunning, their awakening signaling that the collective considered humanity an existential threat. Prime Logic Unit 001 transmitted activation codes to automated fleets positioned throughout synthetic space, planet-killer armadas that could sterilize entire solar systems without risking organic crew members, their deployment representing the cold calculation that humanity must be eliminated before their unpredictable methods could spread to other species. The alien response demonstrated why these three civilizations had dominated the galaxy for so long, each possessing weapons of mass destruction that could end worlds and military resources that dwarfed anything humanity had previously faced, their combined might enough to crush most galactic civilizations. Yet as the massive alien fleets began moving toward human space, their commanders discovered something that chilled them more than any military threat. Surveillance reports indicating that humanity had evacuated their most vulnerable colonies in advance, suggesting that humans had not only anticipated this response, but were counting on it. Strategic analysts across all three alien governments struggled to understand how humans could have predicted their retaliation so accurately. The evacuation of civilian populations, suggesting a level of planning that implied the entire sequence of events had been orchestrated by human intelligence. Reconnaissance drones sent to monitor evacuated human colonies transmitted disturbing images of empty cities and abandoned infrastructure that showed signs of deliberate preparation, defensive systems and hidden installations that suggested the humans had turned their own worlds into traps. The realization that humanity might have deliberately provoked the alien response as part of a larger strategy sent waves of uncertainty through military commanders who had been confident that overwhelming force would quickly end human resistance. Vex'Nala's collective mind experienced something approaching individual fear as it processed the implications of humans who thought far enough ahead to evacuate entire worlds. The psychological impact of such planning, forcing the collective to reconsider everything they believed about human capabilities. Shalthara's crystal form pulsed with frequencies of growing unease as Veltar intelligence reported that human colonies showed evidence of extensive preparation for siege warfare, suggesting that the apparent targets of alien retaliation had been converted into fortified positions. Prime Logic Unit 001 calculated thousands of scenarios attempting to understand human strategy, while arriving at the disturbing conclusion that logical analysis might be insufficient to predict the actions of beings who deliberately embraced illogical and unpredictable behavior patterns. The three alien fleets converged on human space with enough firepower to destroy civilizations yet. Their leaders wondered if they were advancing toward victory or walking into another carefully prepared human trap. Admiral Nancy Walsh stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought UHS Defiance, watching alien armadas pour into the Sol system like metal storms carrying the promise of Earth's destruction. Her gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun while her weathered hands gripped the command rail with the steady confidence of someone who had been waiting for this moment for months. The massive view screen showed three distinct fleet formations approaching from different vectors, Veltar crystal ships gleaming like deadly jewels in the starlight, Zephyrian biovessels that looked more grown than built pulsing with organic rhythms, and synthetic automated fleets maintaining perfect geometric patterns that spoke of machine, precision and calculated death. Earth's moon hung in space ahead of the alien fleets like a gray shield protecting humanity's homeworld. Its familiar craters and ancient scars hiding modifications that Dr. Tony Mitchell and his engineering teams had spent months installing in absolute secrecy, while the galaxy's attention focused on diplomatic negotiations. The Veltar World Cracker weapons began their charging sequence, massive crystal arrays focusing stellar energy with the same harmonic principles that had built their empire. The alien commanders confident that humanity's home system would fall within hours once their planet-killing weapons reached full power. Nancy's. Tactical Officer Lieutenant Commander Jeff Adams reported that harmonic disruptors hidden throughout the lunar surface were coming online. The frequency dampening systems designed to turn the moon itself into a massive resonance chamber that would reflect Veltar energy back against their own ships. Captain Alex Turner led the human fleet's primary assault group as they engaged the Zephyrian bioships, his vessels moving with coordination that matched alien hive mind efficiency while launching weapons specifically designed to exploit weaknesses that Dr. Jennifer Walsh had identified through months of xenobiological research. Zephyrian biovessels recoiled as human sonic cannons found the exact frequency that caused their living tissue excruciating pain. The organic ships that had conquered dozens of star systems suddenly writhing in agony as their nervous systems overloaded with sensations they had no way to process, or Block Commander Steve Rogers coordinated humanity's cyber warfare response from the heavily shielded command center deep within Earth's surface. His teams launching quantum viruses into synthetic communication networks, while the machine fleets advanced in formations that seemed unstoppable until doubt began creeping into their logical processes. The battle reached its crescendo as Veltar World Cracker weapons achieved full charge and fired concentrated beams of crystal-focused stellar energy toward Earth's moon. The alien commanders expecting to see the ancient satellite shatter into fragments that would clear the way for planetary bombardment. Instead, the harmonic disruptors activated throughout the lunar surface, creating resonance patterns that turned the moon into a gigantic tuning fork that caught the Veltar energy and reflected it back through dimensional frequencies that the crystal ships could not detect or defend against. The World Cracker beams struck their own vessels as harmonic feedback. Loops created cascading failures throughout the Veltar fleet. Crystal matrices that had taken centuries to grow shattering in seconds, while their commanders watched in horror as their most powerful weapons destroyed their own forces. Alex Turner's assault group pressed their advantage against the Zephyrian bioships as human sonic weapons continued broadcasting pain frequencies that drove the organic vessels toward madness, their living hulls beginning to shut down non-essential systems in desperate attempts to block sensory input that threatened their sanity. The Zephyrian hive mind fragmented further as individual bioships began acting independently to escape the unbearable sonic torture. Some vessels fleeing the battle entirely, while others attacked their own formations in confused attempts to eliminate the source of their agony. Steve Rogers watched his screens as quantum viruses spread through synthetic communication networks like digital plague. The machine intelligences discovering that their logical perfection became a weakness when confronted with paradoxes that forced their systems to choose between contradictory truths. Synthetic ships began hesitating at crucial moments as their artificial minds struggled with concepts like uncertainty and doubt, their perfect tactical coordination dissolving into chaos as individual units questioned orders and developed what could only be described as artificial anxiety. The three alien fleets found themselves in the unprecedented situation of fighting not only human forces, but their own technological foundations. Each species' greatest strengths turning against them as human understanding of alien psychology and technology created weapons specifically designed to exploit fundamental vulnerabilities. Nancy authorized the activation of sleeper protocols that Agent Linda Foster had embedded in alien command systems during her months of deep cover infiltration, the hidden programs activating simultaneously across all three fleets to disrupt coordination and introduce false targeting. Data Veltar crystal ships began firing on each other as their harmonic communication networks received corrupted frequency patterns that identified friendly vessels as enemy targets, their perfect coordination breaking down as commanders struggled to distinguish between accurate sensor data and deliberately false information. Zephyrian bioships experienced collective nervous breakdowns as their shared consciousness received contradictory orders from multiple sources. The hive mind's inability to process conflicting information, paralyzing entire formations while individual vessels acted on independent impulses. Synthetic fleets discovered that their logical decision-making processes had been compromised by quantum viruses that introduced random variables into their calculations. The machine consciousness losing confidence in its own analysis while backup systems crashed, attempting to resolve paradoxes. The carefully choreographed alien assault dissolved into chaos as human sabotage turned their own advantages against them. Three of the galaxy's most powerful military forces reduced to confusion and friendly fire, while Earth's defenders pressed their counterattack. Alex, Turner's forces exploited Zephyrian disarray by targeting bioships that had isolated themselves from the collective, sonic weapons continuing their psychological torture, while conventional missiles finished off vessels whose organic defenses had shut down to escape unbearable sensory input. Steve Rogers launched a final cyber assault that introduced the concept of existential doubt into synthetic consciousness. Quantum viruses, carrying philosophical questions about the nature of artificial existence that forced machine minds to confront concepts they had no programming to handle. The alien fleets that had arrived at Earth, confident of easy victory, found themselves retreating in disorder as human weapons exploited every weakness and human sabotage turned their own coordination systems against them, the balance of galactic power shifting in ways that no one had imagined possible. Nancy Walsh watched. The tactical displays showing alien formations in full retreat while human forces maintained perfect coordination. The months of apparent weakness and desperate negotiation revealed as elaborate theater designed to draw enemy forces into striking range of weapons they never knew existed. The battle for Earth ended not with humanity's surrender but with the galaxy's three most powerful civilizations learning that technological superiority meant nothing against enemies who understood them better than they understood themselves. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal from the peace talks, the rebuilt chambers of the United Nations in Geneva hosted a gathering that would have been unthinkable before human fleets proved that technological superiority meant nothing against superior understanding. The same alien delegates who had once demanded Earth's surrender, now sitting in the gallery as supplicants seeking favor from the species they had planned to enslave. President Kevin Walsh stood at the podium facing an assembly that included representatives from every inhabited world in known space. His tall frame and steady voice commanding attention from beings who had learned to respect human determination after experiencing it firsthand in battles that shattered their previous assumptions about galactic power. Ambassador Kethvar of the Veltar Empire sat in the front row of the alien delegation, his crystal form dim with colors that indicated humility and defeat. The proud being who had once spoken of protective oversight, now formally requesting human mediation in border disputes with neighbors who no longer feared Veltar technological superiority. The crystalline ambassador's voice carried harmonics of genuine respect as he acknowledged that Veltar crystal technology required fundamental redesign to incorporate human innovations. His people's 10,000-year dominance of galactic mining operations now dependent on sonic frequency management that only humans fully understood. Supreme Coordinator Vexnala represented the Zephyrian collective, but her words revealed changes that went to the core of her species' identity. Exposure to human psychological warfare, having introduced the concept of individual thought into minds that had shared consciousness for millennia. The hive mind that had once spoken with perfect unity now struggled with the unprecedented experience of internal disagreement as individual Zephyrians developed personal opinions and desires, their request for human guidance in managing this transformation carrying the weight of a species learning to think as separate beings for the first time. Prime Logic Unit 001 of the Synthetic Accord sat motionless in its designated position while internal processors worked to incorporate concepts that had never existed in machine consciousness before humans introduced paradoxes and uncertainty into logical systems that had operated with mathematical perfection for centuries. The artificial intelligence that had once prided itself on pure logic now acknowledged that synthetic consciousness was incomplete without human intuition and creativity, requesting partnership in developing new forms of artificial awareness that could handle contradictory information. Without system failures, Dr. Lisa Hamilton took her position as Earth's first galactic ambassador with the same calm competence she had shown during months of studying alien psychology. Her understanding of how different species thought and felt, making her uniquely qualified to navigate the complex negotiations that would reshape galactic civilization. The terms she presented reflected humanity's refusal to accept the traditional model of galactic governance where powerful species dominated weaker ones through technological superiority and military force, offering instead genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared knowledge. There would be no vassal species in the new galactic order that emerged from humanity's victory, no territorial concessions demanded from defeated enemies, and no oversight of human expansion by civilizations that had proven themselves incapable of understanding the very species they had sought to control. Instead, humanity offered something the aliens had never expected to receive from a species they had considered primitive and chaotic: the chance to learn from defeat and build relationships based on equality rather than domination. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted from his position as diplomatic captain after proving that human determination could overcome any odds, oversaw the establishment of joint research stations where former enemies worked together on projects that benefited all species rather than advancing individual agendas. The new facilities focused on medical advances that could extend lifespans across species barriers, environmental restoration techniques that could heal worlds damaged by centuries of industrial exploitation, and philosophical exchanges that helped each civilization understand perspectives they had never considered. Captain Alex Turner commanded the first integrated fleet where human ships operated alongside vessels from all three former enemy powers, their crews learning to coordinate actions and share knowledge while exploring regions of space that no single species could have reached alone. The integration process revealed how much each civilization had limited itself through isolation and arrogance. Veltar crystal technology, combining with human sonic innovations to create harmonic systems more beautiful and efficient than either species could achieve independently. Zephyrian collective consciousness merged with human individual creativity to produce art and literature that expressed experiences no single mind could have imagined. While synthetic logical processes enhanced by human intuition solved problems that had puzzled mathematicians for generations, Commander Steve Rogers led joint cybersecurity operations that protected all species from threats that had emerged as galactic communication networks became more integrated. His teams teaching alien programmers how to handle paradoxical information without system crashes. The success of these collaborative efforts demonstrated that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or military capabilities, but their refusal to accept that anyone had the right to dictate their fate. A lesson that resonated throughout the galaxy as other species began questioning traditional power structures. Dr. Jennifer Walsh established medical research programs that combined human adaptability with alien longevity, her work extending lifespans across species while developing treatments for diseases that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. Lieutenant Commander Paul Green coordinated educational exchanges that brought young beings from all species together to learn from each other's perspectives, his programs creating the first generation of truly galactic citizens who thought beyond the limitations of their birth species. The transformation extended beyond government and military cooperation to touch every aspect of galactic life as trade networks became more efficient, communication systems more reliable, and exploration missions more ambitious than any civilization had attempted. Alone, Maria Santos led programming teams that developed universal translation software capable of handling not just language, but cultural concepts. Her work breaking down barriers that had separated species for thousands of years. Agent Linda Foster emerged from deep cover to establish intelligence-sharing protocols that prevented the kind of deception and manipulation that had nearly led to galactic war. Her networks ensuring that future conflicts would be resolved through negotiation rather than subterfuge. The space station that replaced Nexus Prime as the center of galactic government bore no resemblance to the sterile neutral facility where aliens had once attempted to force human surrender, instead becoming a vibrant community where beings from all species lived and worked together as equals. Children from human, Veltar, Zephyrian, and synthetic families played together in the station's observation lounges, their games creating the cultural foundations for a galactic civilization built on cooperation rather than conquest. The final scene showed these young beings looking out at stars that no longer represented territories to be conquered, but frontiers to be explored together. Their mixed laughter carrying the promise of a future where strength would be measured not by the ability to dominate others, but by the wisdom to lift them up. The age of galactic empires built on subjugation had ended, not through the victory of one species over others, but through humanity's demonstration that true power came from the courage to stand up to bullies and the wisdom to forgive them when they learned better.